All right, we are rolling. All right. So, I went through your papers. I told your parents, you're gonna have to excuse me because I'm gonna trip myself or something probably over this. Oh, and I need my glasses. I would like, as we get through the school year a little farther, I would like you guys to start making corrections on your papers. In other words, write them again with my corrections. But I'm not going to ask you to do that this week because we just got started and you're just getting a feel for what I want, and it doesn't seem fair to, especially those of you who handwrite them out, it's just kind of a pain. But what I have done on your papers is I've tried to give you feedback. First of all, checked grammar things. And I have a couple of things I want to mention that a lot of people did that I thought it might be good to talk about. And just in general, as the year goes on, I want to guide you more and more how to put your thoughts together better, okay? If this has been really, really easy for you, enjoy that. And know that we're going to be increasing the difficulty later. And if it's not easy for you, then just say, yay, we're going to move slowly. All right? So actually, well, no, this is good for me because then I will have to learn people's names. Isabella, okay. I'm sorry if this is somebody I don't know. Amorous. She's the one who's not here. Okay. Matthias? Oh. I thought I had it and you freaked me out. Okay. Adeline. All right. What have you yet? Okay, Lauren, you're old news. You're not special anymore. Okay, Alice and Sophie and Bailey. Okay, I just wanted to, I've got to Sophie. I'm not collecting these this year. Don't give me these. Okay, nice. Throwing Sophie under the bus there. I'm not going to collect these. I have so many papers. I want to spend time on your papers. You guys are in 7th and 8th grade. You can write the right answers down for yourself, all right? And let your mom make sure you do that. I don't need to do that, so see, I threw you under the bus too because, and Alice did it too, I want to announce. Okay. All right. It's like a rat in a maze. I have to follow my own string. Ella, the clue, nice. Dalton? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to, okay, Roy, I know Roy. Jesse, yeah. Simeon, I do know you. Maya and Rhett. All right, I'm getting there. So here's the rules. When you get your paper back, if I make a change on your paper or a comment and you don't understand it, hey gentlemen, with the hats, call them with the hats. I want you to ask me. Everybody hear that? There are no silly questions, all right, as far as your paper goes. Why did you think I didn't need this comma? Why did you think I did need a comma? Why should this be capitalized? There's no silly questions, okay? So, that said, is there anything on your paper that I wrote, yay, that you don't understand? Yes. Oh, I told you to ask something, didn't I? Oh, no.
Like I said.
Oh, okay. So, lie and lay. First of all, before we do this, I was thinking about this weekend. Since we're studying the Middle Ages, this is cool. Are you guys familiar with the term grammary? Grammary. It's a medieval word, and you can probably guess what word we get from it. Grammar. Guess what it means? You'll never guess. Old? Grandma. Okay, okay. I said that's grandma, not grandma. Anyway, it means magic. I know, magic, casting spells. People with the power of words were the people with the power, okay? So you can think of it as terms, like yesterday we were talking about this and they were like, oh, like witches casting spells. I suppose, but you know, it could also be the intelligentsia, anybody who learned to read and write. So the clergy had the power of knowledge, had the power over demons, you know, exorcisms and things like that, to speak. Think of it, speaking in the name of Jesus is a power, using his name, but his, not just like a magic spell, you know, the power behind it to cast out evil. And there's a power behind words, and they knew that. Yes, Bailey.
This is awkward, but it's
Oh.
not. It's supposed to be what he said exactly.
Okay. He said they should think about whether God would like it if they killed. Oh, okay. Yes. Can I do her lie and lay?
Yeah.
And then may I borrow your paper? Do you mind if I share this with everyone so that we can use it as an example? If anyone, this is another thing. We're going through a lot of things today because this is your first paperback. If you don't want to give me permission to share whatever you did on your paper, I understand that, but I appreciate it if you're willing, because if you did it or you don't know it, chances are someone else in here would benefit from hearing it. And it's not, oh, look what so-and-so did on their paper. It's, oh, let's take a look at this piece of writing and see how we can change it, okay? So it's never personal. All right, enough with magic grammar. So it's supposed to make you happy about grammar. Like it gives you powers. Oh, it gives you power. Oh, don't shake your heads. It does. Okay. Lie and lay. This is an annoying pair of words. All right. Does anyone want to tell me how to tell the difference or when to use one or the other? And by the way, I'm not talking about lying like telling something that's not true. All right. This would be lying in bed versus laying something down on the table. Rhett, lay it on us. Yes. Lay always takes an object, and lie is what we call intransitive. It has no object. You don't do it to something, you do it to yourself. All right? So I lie down on my bed today, but I lay the marker on the shelf, okay? But, so that's not so bad. But the tricky thing is when you make them past tense, okay? Lay isn't so bad. I lay the glass down today. I laid the glass down yesterday. I have laid glasses down many times on the table. All right, that's pretty, okay, lay. Got it. Unfortunately, I lie down on my bed today. I lay down on my bed yesterday. I have lain on my bed many times. And here's the problem. Right? The present tense of doing it to something, I lay the paper down, is the past tense of I lay down on my bed, and we get confused. So Ella, can I see your, I'm just wandering all over my cords today. So she put, okay, to his left lied a grassy field. All right, which makes, if English made sense, lay laid, lie lied. Duh, it makes total sense, but it's lie. So it's actually to his left lay a grassy field. Yeah, that's, so you know what, just to make you all feel good, most adults today don't get this right. It drives me nuts. I don't think it's that hard, but people don't. Anyway, I won't go on about that. All right, Bailey, are you ready? Okay. So Bailey, let me preface this by saying something that seems very, very obvious. When we write, we're taking ideas out of our heads and putting them down so we can give them to someone else and they can know the ideas that were in our heads. Make sense? Right? So the clearer we are, the more the idea in our heads matches the idea that our reader gets. Does that make sense? If we're unclear, then we're going to read it, and you've probably read things and said, I don't really understand what they mean by this. And that might be because they used words you don't know, or that might be because they were just not clear in what they meant. So here's what Bailey said, and it just struck me. It's going to sound, on the surface, it's going to sound very clear because we know the story. She said, St. Patrick told them to stop and think about what they were doing. He said they should think about whether God would like it if they killed their brother. If they killed their brother. Now, I know exactly what Bailey means, but if they killed their brother, to me, it sounds a bit like, because we had two brothers, right? They is a group, it's more than one. If they both killed a third brother out here, like it's them with these are daggers, I don't know. And they're, oh, that's really, really very bad. Okay, I told you I don't draw. Okay, they're going to kill their brother. But if we wanted to be perfectly clear, if God would be happy if either one killed his brother. Do you see the difference? If they killed their brother, like, I understand perfectly what you mean, because I know the story and there's two guys. But it sounds like God would be happy if they killed their brother. Well, I didn't know there was another brother. Are they going to band together? They're mad at each other and they're going to band together and go take it out on their little tiny brother? That's terrible. They were bad already, but now they're even worse. But if we say, if God would be happy if either one of them killed his brother, that's very clear. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean, have I just breezed through that, or does that make sense? So what Bailey said is not grammatically incorrect. It's just ambiguous. It's unclear. Yes? If they killed their brother. Why am I even trying to do accents? Yes, Maya. Okay, that is a good question. So to repeat Maya's question, for Amorous and also for if you didn't hear, when they were turned back from stone to their natural form, is that close? And then I put a comma. Okay, I'm going to use a shorter sentence that uses when. When I eat cookies, I drop crumbs, all right? Which is pretty much true. Of course. Is there another kind? Okay. Does everyone, you probably know about this, does everyone see that this sentence has two parts? And each part has a subject and a verb. We have I eat, and we have I drop. One of these parts can be a sentence all by itself. Which part? The bottom, I drop crumbs. But I can't just come up to you and say, when I eat cookies. Because you're left saying, what? You know the rule now, don't you? It's a number 5 opener, exactly. Yes, so whenever we have the famous when, while, where, as, since, if, although, because, whenever we start a sentence with a clause like that, although it was raining outside, comma, I decided not to bring an umbrella. Because I love grammar, comma, I'm always excited when Mrs. Ferguson shows me my mistakes. No, okay. But here's the thing, when we switch it, just a second, Bailey. When we switch it the other way, when this comes first, you know this, don't you? Is that what you're going to say? Oh, okay. Oh, I drop crumbs when I eat cookies. We don't put a comma between them then. And here's the thing. When I eat cookies, I drop crumbs. It just all sort of goes. I don't see where to stop. When I eat cookies, I drop crumbs. I'm not sure where the thought ends, and the comma helps me see where the thought ends. It's easier when I see suddenly the word when. I drop cookies when, oh, there's a new additional thought coming. I don't need a comma warning me. There's a little separation here. The when tells me. It was raining. That's not a good one. I hate it when Mrs. Ferguson tells me my grammar mistakes. No, it's supposed to be I love it. When I see that when, I know there's a change coming. So whenever we have a clause, a subordinate clause that starts with when, while, where, as, since, if, although, because, we usually at the end of that thought put a comma. Yes? Put a what? When I drop crumbs, I eat cookies? But that's not true. Because I drop crumbs when I eat other things too. In fact, I drop crumbs when I eat almost anything.
Yeah, drops crumbs, friends get the cookie.
In Wheelock's Latin, there's a what's another Latin I was doing? There was a saying they were supposed to memorize, dum spiro spero, when I breathe, I hope. But I had a student once that kept saying, when I hope, I breathe. It's like, no, you breathe all the time, not only when you're, that's just, there's a section in Alice in Wonderland like that. Okay, yes, Ella. Okay. You rise and raise is another lie-lay problem. You raised your hand, you do it to something else. This is very petty of me, and I apologize in advance, but this bothers me every Easter because Jesus did not raise from the dead. Jesus rose from the dead. God raised him. I know it's very petty, like I'm celebrating the resurrection, and all I can think of is, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so, I said, so this is, sorry, thank you, comma, sir. And I said period, and then you changed it to a comma, and then
Okay.
I thought they would be capitalized.
Okay, but they said humbly is not really a complete sentence. You see, so what she did is, thank you, sir, end of sentence, capital, they said humbly. They said humbly, your explanatory words of the speech are part of that sentence. Okay. So we can't start a new sentence. We can't say, I want cookies. Do you see something, do you see a Mrs. Ferguson said? Because Mrs. Ferguson said by itself doesn't really give you a complete thought. It leaves you saying, what did she say? I want to know. Even though it wasn't very important what she said. So what we need to do is separate it out with a comma. Okay? Are there any other specific questions on your papers? Two things I noticed that I would like to throw in before we move on. One, a lot of you had bodybuilding brothers, which is awesome, which is totally fine. But on many of your papers, you will notice that I took the two words bodybuilding brothers, which is tremendous alliteration in addition. And I put a little hyphen between bodybuilding. A lot of you see that. Does anybody have an idea why I think I should put a little hyphen between those? Yes.
I don't know.
You don't know. Awesome. Maya. You're saying Yes, so here's the deal. Whenever we use two words together, sometimes it's more than two words, and we use them as a group as one adjective. What kind of brothers? Bodybuilding brothers. Now, if I wanted to use bodybuilding, if I said, my son Ethan devotes much of his time to bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is not being an adjective. He devotes his time to building. What kind of building? Bodybuilding. Great, okay? But it's when I use it as a group to describe the brothers. For example, I could say, I'm going to stop writing everything on the board. I could say, these chocolate chip cookies are easy to make. Great. And easy describes how the making goes, and we don't have any problem. But if I said, these are easy to make cookies, what kind of cookies? Easy to make. Easy -to -make. That's the difference. And that's why you will see sometimes the same two words. And sometimes there's no hyphen. And then sometimes there is a hyphen. And you think, what do these people not know what they're doing? They do know what they're doing. They only use a hyphen if that set of words is used to describe a noun. If you can ask about the noun, what kind, and a group of words describes it, you hyphenate that group of words, all right? Now, I've told you this once. I don't expect that, I'm not going to yell at you if you give me another paper. I'm not going to scream hyphen, in red and just draw all over your paper. I'm not going to do that to you. But it's something to keep in mind, and you might start noticing it. Sometimes when we learn something, then you notice it everywhere. Have you ever thought about that? If you hear about a new song or a story, then suddenly it seems like you notice it everywhere, even though it must have been there before. You just know now, and it sticks out for you, so that might start sticking out for you. Was there somebody who had a question? No. Okay, one last thing, and then I promise the magical grammar time. It's done. I don't feel like the magic pep talk is really working. Some of you started telling your story in the past tense. There were two brothers, and they were arguing, and he grabbed a fence post, and then suddenly you say something like this: St. Patrick walks up. Suddenly we're in the present tense. And then magically, we go back to the past tense for no reason. Generally, when you start in one tense, keep it that way. Don't just randomly decide to make a verb in another tense than you've been using, okay? There are exceptions, but I'm not going to cloud the water by giving the exceptions, all right? So, but it's perfectly okay to tell it in the present tense. One day, two brothers are fighting. They are arguing over their inheritance. Do we need to separate, or you have all power to separate if necessary, okay. St. Patrick walks up. He tries to reason with them. It's okay to do it all in present tense. But in generally, we try to keep it in the same tense, okay? Oh my goodness, it's 9:05 already? That's too much grammar, okay, even for me. Too much magic. All right, get your reading questions out that I gave you last week. And I need to disentangle myself from, how does that? I have a ton of stuff to give you guys today. But the first thing is the fun thing. Oh, as if the rest of it's not going to be fun. That I just insinuated something negative. So my youngest son minored in Arabic in college. And Arabic, if you've ever seen, it's just very squiggly. I don't know what else to say. It looks like, no offense, but it looks a little bit like when a toddler just learns to hold a pencil and they just learn to run lines across the paper. But it makes sense to those who know how to read it. Anyway, my son I wrote your name in the corner, and he wrote your names in Arabic for you. Okay, so would you guys, Ella and, don't tell, okay, tell me. Adeline, oh, there go the glasses. Would you guys, while I rescue my glasses, would you guys just pass those out to people so I don't trip all over my cord and so I can pass other things out? Because we've used so much time with our magical grammar. Since we're talking about the Arab world and the rise of Islam, I thought it would be fun to see what your name would look like in Arabic. Okay, and I'm going to come around and give you guys some maps while we do that. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. 3, 4, 5. Everybody take one of the maps. Everybody take a map. And grab your questions. So I brought a copy of the map that is, the printing is a little clearer of the 3 different colors, but hopefully you can tell. So I'll hold that up when we get to that portion. But the first question I asked you guys is, what does it mean to be a nomad? It says in the very second sentence of our reading, most of the Arab people were nomads. Alice, what's a nomad? Okay, people, and it tells you right after that, right? If you were kept reading after the word nomad, wandering from place to place. Why would someone do that? Maya, what do you think? Okay, okay. So in that case, it would be not their choice so much, right? It would be because they were on the run. Rhett, what do you think? Okay, which would be kind of forced too, because they ran out of resources a little bit. What do you think, Ella? You got another one?
They could just not be hard to be difficult to content. Be content, so they could just, I can understand that, just moving around, wanting to see places, and then the group, I don't know, you're increased change of survival.
Okay.
That's what I would do.
I find it interesting, and I kind of lean towards you guys, that everybody's explanations kind of, well, they have no choice or they're not content. But you know, there are groups of people even today that just travel because they follow the animals that they're hunting. Or there were groups of American Indians that hunted the buffalo. They followed the buffalo, right? If you're hunting an animal that migrates, you migrate too. Or we're talking about a desert people. What's true of animals in deserts? And yeah, you got to find water. So you might base your travels on where the water currently is. You know, during a rainy season, there would be water in places where there isn't during the dry season. So some people just naturally move around because that's their lives are based on something that changes by the seasons. It's interesting. So there was a movie last year called Nomadland. I guess it won the Oscar. And my husband and I watched that this last weekend. And it was just really interesting because I was like you guys. I kept thinking, but why would someone not want a home? Why would someone not want to stay put? But the main character in this movie, she just really enjoyed moving around seasonally and visiting all sorts of exciting places, and she lived out of her van. That was her home. And I just found, I had to ask myself questions. What would be good about that, and what would be hard about that? What would I gain, and what would I lose? Anyway, the Arab peoples living in the map I just gave you, we are talking about, I'm gonna hold up my big map here. You guys will have to be patient with me. Next week I should move my table closer So you guys probably know this. So here's Egypt, this is North Africa. So this map is exactly like the map I just gave you, it's only bigger. And then there's this triangle-shaped area. Today it's mostly, well, do you guys know what it is? Saudi Arabia and a couple of other small countries. And it is desert. This is the area where these people are living, okay? And the second question I asked you is, what was the sacred city of the Arabs and what was located there? I'm gonna let Simeon do it. Mecca, and what was in Mecca that was so great? The Kaaba, I'm sorry, yeah, I gave him the whole, yeah, but do you have something to add? The black stone. So somebody yesterday said, that cube fell from heaven? No, the picture is the building they built around the stone. That cube building did not fall from heaven. You know what, I feel like any rocks that fall from heaven, you don't want to be underneath. What do we call rocks that fall from heaven in general? Meteorites. I'm sorry, that was a group answer, yes. Meteors, meteorites. Oh, very good. I don't know. Oh, we don't want asteroids to fall on us because they're big, right? Or maybe they're not all big. Anyway, this is an interesting astronomy. This has suddenly turned into astronomy class. Maybe it was a meteorite. I don't know what it is. As far as I know, there's no photographs. Because I don't think anybody goes inside and takes pictures. Do you know? I mean, I don't know this. I'm just speculating, but like, why? Every time I've ever read about it, you see the temple from the outside, but non-Muslims are not allowed to go in the area surrounding it, even, for one. Inside I don't even know if people go inside. I know very little about this, obviously. If you are curious, look it up and find out, and you can share with the rest of us. But yes, so you will see on your maps, Mecca down here, in this town. The Arabs, by the way, who are these Arab people? In other words, who is their ancestor? Where do these people come from, Rhett? Well, no, because there were already Arabs there, and Muhammad was an Arab living, so the Muslims, but the Arab people, who's their forefather? Where did they come from? What do you think, Bailey? No, Allah is one of the gods that they were worshiping. What do you think, Roy? No, not Muhammad. Abraham. And you're like, what? Okay, do you remember Abraham was promised a child in his old age, born with Sarah, who was going to inherit the promises that in them all the peoples of the earth would be blessed. But it didn't happen for a while, all right? And they got a little tired of waiting. And they thought maybe they didn't quite know the plan. So do you remember Sarah had a serving maid named Hagar? And they said, Abraham, why don't you marry Hagar and maybe you can have a son with her. And maybe that will be the son. And he did have a son with Hagar. What was that son's name? Isaac's big brother. Ishmael. I'm sorry. It's okay to have a balance of raising hands and shouting out. Ishmael, yes.
Okay, I found out.
Oh,
The Kaaba is kept closed. Is the overwhelming number of people. Then sometimes, like during the year, sometimes during the year, there's too much.
okay. But to say anything about pictures? Okay, that's fine, thank you. So people rarely go in, and as far as we know, they don't take snapshots when they go in. So I don't know what the rock looks like. And maybe very few people do. Okay, so back to Ishmael. Ishmael was Isaac's big brother, and when Ishmael was probably you guys' age, Isaac was having, little baby Isaac had been born, and he was a toddler, and he was having a birthday party. And Ishmael made some snide remark about Isaac. And Isaac's mom, Sarah, heard it. Do you remember this story? And said to Abraham, I don't like that slave woman and her son. Get rid of them. So they were sent away, all right? But before that happened, God said to Hagar, and God said to Abraham, that is not the child that I promised. You are still going to have a baby with Sarah. But because Ishmael is your son, I will bless him too, and I will make him into a great nation. It's the Arab groups. So whenever we hear in the news about all of the unrest in the Middle East and the Jewish state and Israel and all the Arab groups around, it's Isaac and Ishmael. So the Arabs trace their line back to Abraham too, through Ishmael and their half-brothers, the Arabs and the Jews. Okay, that was a sideline. My next question that I asked you guys, we met Muhammad. What made Muhammad think it was a good idea to start spreading a new religion? Jesse? Yes, Jesse, tell us. Apparently, he thinks an angel called him, the angel Gabriel. What's, I was going to say notorious for. That's not exactly the word you want to use for an angel. What is, yes, announcing to Mary, you are going to have a baby, Mary. Muhammad claimed, he used to go out, first of all, he started life as a camel driver. And like, you just picture him like a cab driver. That's not what a camel driver is. But he just suddenly had this image, like he's got a little sign and a little, no, that's not a camel driver. We said that triangle piece of land, the Arabian Peninsula, is desert. And you don't just travel by yourself without a guide, because you will die if you don't know where to find the water and how to get through. So when people wanted to travel, they got together in groups for safety, and they had a guide. And Muhammad was a guide. So if you packed your camels full of, I don't know, stuff. Did you say Oreos?
Yeah. It's necessary.
Oreos are necessary. I thought chocolate chip cookies were necessary to survive. Anyway. But the Oreo white stuff. Oh. You have to lick it all out before you go and then just take the hard cookies. Anyway. If you have goods that you want to sell somewhere else, you pack your camels and you have a guide. So Muhammad was one of these guides, and he met up with a lady, an older widow lady who took a shine to him, as they say, and they got married. And she set him up in his whole, I don't know, he had a fleet of camels. I don't know. But he was very devout. He liked to think about God. And the Arabs worshiped more than one. Allah was one of them. And he would go out in this cave and he would just think about things. And he claimed that an angel, the angel Gabriel, started visiting him in this cave and telling him about this new religion, that Allah, there was only one God, and his name was Allah, and the other gods weren't real gods, and that there was a series of prophets, Moses, Elijah, Jesus, and now Muhammad. Muhammad is the prophet of Allah, and he's called to spread the word. Now, hopefully, you all can see the problem with lumping Moses, Elijah, Jesus, and Muhammad all into one group. Which one of those doesn't belong in that group? Jesus. Jesus is God. Muhammad never claimed to be God. Moses and Elijah didn't claim they were God. But for Muslims, Jesus is just another prophet. But Muhammad came along and he superseded. He took the place. He brought a new revelation to them. Does that make sense? Okay. Did somebody, I saw a hand. Did somebody have a comment, or am I just seeing things? Alice asked, could Gabriel have been a demon? I mean, not Gabriel as a demon, but you know what I mean? Could this have been a demon disguised? Because we learn, is it Hebrews, where, you know, well, that's people have entertained angels unaware. You know, that he disguises himself as an angel of light. That Satan does. I don't know. But Paul says, if anyone comes preaching another gospel, don't believe it. If anyone comes with a new message, don't believe it. It's not true. And Muhammad came with a new message. He did. And here, before I start giving you all the answers to the questions, we'll wait till we get down below. So was it well received at first? Did people say, yay, let's all join this new religion, just as a group? No, it was not. So much so that something happened. This is your next question. Something happened in 622. Oh my goodness. Adeline. Yes, he fled, and look on your maps, to the town just to the north, to Medina. Bailey, yes. He fled Mecca to Medina. Now, I would like you to get your timelines out. Some of you, I see green papers already. So you have a page that has 400 AD at one end and 700 AD at the other end. And it already should have the fall of Rome on it in 476. I would like us to add 622. Muhammad flees from Mecca. Let's label that. And I'm going to tell you why we are bothering to write this on our timeline after you write that down. Alice, spilling my secrets over here. No, it's fine. I'm glad you know. Can everyone see okay? I moved that table. It was up closer, and I moved it back when I came in, but I can always move the whiteboard back a little bit too. The reason that I want us to note this is because for Muslims, this is year one. This is what they count their time from. So those of you who were in my class last year, what did the Greeks count their time from? All right. The first Olympics. What did the Romans count their time from? All right, go for it. The founding of Rome, 753 BC. What do we count our time from? Right. Birth of Jesus. It's 2021, 2021 years, roughly, close enough. Yes. Oh, okay. So would you agree that whatever a people decides to count their time from is important to them? If you decide to say, this is our beginning, this is our year one, this is important. Now, why fleeing rather than coming back in triumph, which he did later, is more important? I don't know. I don't know. It's a question I will have to ponder.
Maybe it's like just really the start, like a good start of that religion, because after that, yes, he had his wife and his children and a couple of his friends as his followers, but after that, he got the nomadic tribe.
Yes. In Medina, people started joining him so much so that they could go back and take over. Let's go through the last few questions just really fast. You can, yeah, Alice, did you have a question? Yes, they call this flight the hijra. All right, you don't have to write this down, but hijra is the word that means flight, not like, flapping your wings, but fleeing. That's what the hijira means. It's the flight. I'm running away because they want to kill me. So just as a group, let's just go through the last few questions because time is moving on. What was the new religion called? Islam. What does the name mean? Surrender. Okay, I don't like that. I shouldn't say that. One of my students yesterday said, yeah, but they're very military and they took over the world and they're surrendering. It means surrender or submission to the will of Allah. It doesn't mean surrender to other people. So I like submission better than surrender because surrender sounds very military, you know, but submission sounds more spiritual. Like we submit to one another in love. So it means submission to the will of Allah. So what are the followers called? Muslims. So the religion is called Islam, which means submission to the will of Allah. Yeah, I know. It's just like Islamans or Islamites or something, but no, they get a new name. And what is their sacred book? The Quran, which sometimes I think the more Arabic spelling is like that. And then when we turn it sort of into an English word, we spell it like that. Yes. Yes.
Is it pronounced Qatar or Qatar?
I always say Qatar, but I say, okay. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes we try to pronounce things like the locals pronounce it, and then other things we just Americanize them just with no reason. Like for the whole time I grew up, Niger was Niger, and somehow it's suddenly Niger. And I'm like, okay, they speak French in Niger, but I don't speak French. And like when I was in school, it was Niger and Nigeria, but now I watch the news and it's Niger. And I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, I'm just saying one is trying to be more consistent with what they pronounce it. You know what, I feel like no one is gonna come after us if we say Qatar or Qatar. Probably. I don't know, that's not a very good teaching answer. I'm supposed to have a definitive, I don't. A lot of foreign names, we just all pronounce differently. And heck, we don't even in Illinois know how to pronounce the names of the towns that we have. How is it Cairo in Southern Illinois? And when we moved here, we thought we were looking at a house in Milan. We're like, no, it's Milan. It's Milan. And then I live in Orion. It's Orion. I'm so confused. Sometimes I don't know what to call the constellation anymore. I have to stop and think. Flip a coin. Qatar, Qatar. That's all I have for you. So once upon a time, I got curious. So I read the Quran, and it was just very weird. And all I can say is, it's sort of like, one of my students yesterday said, like if you put the Old Testament in a blender and then you pick the pieces out. Okay, I'm not quite doing it justice, but you'll start reading a story and it seems very familiar. It's Joseph, or it's Moses or something. But then bits from other stories get thrown in, and people are all confused, and then suddenly it's Mary, but wait a minute, I thought we were way back in the Old Testament, and now we're talking about Mary, and I don't understand. It was just very peculiar. But remember where these people are. They are very close to Israel. And at this point, this whole portion of the Middle East and North Africa has become Christian by the 600s. So they've been exposed to the scriptures. They know about the scriptures, but it's sort of like a hodgepodge. I'm not doing it justice, but that's how it struck me. And this is not, okay, this isn't a politics class, and this isn't an anthropology class. This is just a history class because I love history. And all I can say is they took over the known world, almost all the known world in 100 years. The Muslims. by force. That's what happened. So on your map, you will see, this is a pretty big area. So everybody pull the map out that I gave you. So you'll see at the key, this is 750 miles. This is a big area. And you will see the first area. I'm going to hold this up so you can just make sure you see better. Right along the edge here, and this little tip here, there's a darker area. On mine, it's got diagonal lines. And on your key, it says expansion under Muhammad, 622 to 632, 10 years. In 10 years, Islam had spread here. By the way, 632 is when Muhammad died. Yes. 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 Which the only, hold that thought. I want to come back to that. Then you will see an area that's slightly lighter, and it goes all the way up here to the Caspian Sea, all the way up to Persia, all the way up to Tripoli. That's the expansion by 661, 30 years. 30 years, that far. But the amazing thing is that last one, it goes all the way around through Spain up to the edge of France. It takes all the way up to the edge of what's Turkey now by 750. In 130 years, this is where Islam had spread. And so what Rhett said, it probably makes you think of the spread of Christianity. We have a teacher who taught for 3 years, and his disciples took it, and it spread like wildfire. But here's the difference. Not only is the difference one true and one is not true. That's the important difference. But the difference is Christians didn't take over the government, right? This was, Christianity was something that spread from within us, right? So a heart spoke to another heart, and they said, I want to live like that. And people said, are you sure? Because you could get your head lopped off. Yes, I want life. You have it, and I want it. Take me to the local church. I want in. But Islam came with soldiers, right? And they came. Now, up until the time of the Turks, who we're going to talk about later, you were allowed to stay in Muslim-conquered lands and not be a Muslim. You just had to pay a really high tax. So high that maybe you can't stay. So high that maybe you drop into poverty. All right, but they didn't execute you for not becoming a Muslim. Not yet. The Turks were a different matter, okay? But up to that time, it was, you could live peacefully and exist in a Muslim country. One of the last church father, John of Damascus, he lived in Damascus, which was controlled by the Muslims, and is one of the church fathers. Was writing letters and theological treatises and lived under Muslim rule. But you had to pay for it, okay, with money. So this is not a popular thing to say, and I am not standing here. I feel like we live in a world where you have to be careful, and I know a Muslim man. My husband's boss is named Ali, and he's from Lebanon, and I just don't know that he'd swat a fly if it landed on him. Everything bad happens to Ali, and he's just so sweet. He's not really a practicing Muslim. He's just, I grew up in a Muslim country, so I guess I'm a Muslim. He's that kind of guy. But as a religion, they took over the known world. Almost all the known world in 130 years. That's a historical fact. And so, of course, we have groups now, Muslim groups, and people are surprised that they want to take over areas. I'm like, well, but that's what they did. If you just pick up a history book, that's what it did. That's what they do. And this is a historical fact, whether it's popular today or not. It's just true. And again, that doesn't mean every single Muslim person that you meet is an evil, bloodthirsty killer and a conqueror. That does not mean that at all. But it does mean the organized group, that was their mission, all right? So there were 5 pillars of Islam. If you ever can remember them, she mentions them. Giving alms, pray 5 times a day towards Mecca, 3 times, 5 times. State there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. Make a pilgrimage to Mecca sometime in your life. Remember number 5? I'm not going to take the time to look in the book. Can you remember it? Yeah, and so I figured out 4 of them. Yeah, and I can't remember. So Dorothy Mills lists them in your book. In other words, on the surface, this is not, praying is good, except you need to pray to the right entity. Giving to the poor is good. But as a people, they made it all the way around to, map again. In Spain, there's the Pyrenees Mountains that separate Spain from France. And they went into France. And next week, we're going to read about the guy that stopped them. He is Charlemagne's grandpa. Is going to stop them. The Muslim groups, the Arab groups, like I said, the Turks came in, they were Muslim, finally took Constantinople in 1453. Interestingly, the last push, it's in the 1600s, and for some reason 1683 is always the number that floats in my head, why I have numbers floating in my head. I don't know. But 1683, I think. Vienna. I think I got it. And there was a huge battle, and the Muslim incursion towards Europe was stopped, and the battle was fought on September 11th. I'm not kidding. I don't think September 11th was a random choice. That was the last battle of the late Middle Ages, early modern world that stopped the Muslim push to take over Europe. So next week, we are going to find out about France. Why France is called France, and who these Franks are, and who their leaders are. And so I'm just going to go around and do it. While I pass these out, though, I want to make a couple of other comments. The Arab world gave us a lot of important knowledge. Remember in the West, we talked about the fact that people had kind of forgotten how to read Greek? But Aristotle and Plato, they wrote in Greek, so they didn't really have access to that. And the Arabs had them, and they translated them into Arabic. And when they went to Spain, they brought them with them. And most of the medieval world of Europe knew Plato and Aristotle because of the Arabs, because of Arab teachers. So it went from Greek to Arabic to Latin. And so people like Thomas Aquinas were familiar with Aristotle through the Arabs. They also gave you something that I'm sure you're all very happy about. We've already used them today. Oh, you are? I see. I kept one because I thought you guys are missing it. I must not have one. Is there an extra one on another table? Yeah. Oh, okay. You can just leave it on the table when you leave. So the Romans, if they wanted to do their math, which I'm sure you all just really love to do your math. Maybe some of you really do. So I've got 428 plus 54. Yay. Okay. So if you have a problem like this, when you do your math, what do you do to the numbers, first of all, Roy? Okay, that would be, well, why do you do that? Why don't we just do it like this? Because when we have 400, what did I say? I said 28, but I only did 18. 428 plus 54, where do I put the 5 and the 4? Why? Why can't I just put it over here? Why can't I just put a 5 and a 4 here? Place value. Sorry. Yeah, we have to add ones with ones and tens with tens and hundreds with hundreds. Okay, how am I going to do that here? Yeah, but even if I do, this is 4. This whole thing is 8. I know. So these numbers, this system comes from the Arabs. They invented this system. And thank you Arabs so much, because I just quit. Now, I went through calculus. I did a semester of calculus in college. No, I would have quit in 2nd grade. No, I give up. I give up. I can't do this. It's a miracle to me that Roman engineers brilliantly built all this stuff, and this is how they're calculating. But thank you, Arabs. They also invented something else. What if it's not 54? What if it's 504? They invented a mark that means I don't have any. You know, like they invented nothing. Great. They invented 0. Exciting. But you see, it makes all the difference if you're lining up place value. It's really important. They're not convinced. I can see the faces. We're not thankful to the Arabs. Well, because see how easy it would be to get confused then. Was this an accident? Is it supposed to be 540? Is it supposed to be 54? Did I just write it in the wrong column accidentally? But the 0 reminds me, no, I didn't. That's what I meant. I have no 10s. Anyway, we can thank the Arabs for that. They also built fabulous domed and arched buildings. So you have a picture in your book, if it's like mine, I think most of them do, of the mosque in Cordoba. Sometimes it's spelled Cordoba in Spain. And it's in black and white in your book, but you should go home and Google it. The stripes are red. It's really bright and colorful. It's very pretty. Anyway. So next week, I want you to read chapter 5 of your Dorothy Mills book. We are also going to read some more of the Arabian Nights. And let me give you your assignment for that, and then let me ask you what you think about the story of the little hunchback. That is just beyond weird. Okay, if your book looks like mine, like this will be the right page numbers. If it doesn't, we are starting at the story of Prince, with a really long name, Camaralzaman, which I also don't know that I am pronouncing right, Ella, through our favorite, Aladdin. Okay. Some people, I don't know if it's this class or not, I know some of my Tuesday kids, they had trouble getting the book, and their edition doesn't have all quite the same stories, and if that's you, it's okay. It's okay, because we're just meeting some of these stories and getting a feel for the flavor of them and what these Persian fairy tales are like, so don't worry about it. Yeah, Maya. Oh, I didn't collect your papers. Would you send them, so I don't trip over my cord, would you just send them to one side and just set them on the floor next to your table? And I will collect them after you guys leave. So, did the little hunchback strike anyone as being different from the other stories? And if so, in what way? Maya, what do you think? What? Okay, they confessed everything. And it had a happy ending. Alice, what struck you as? Oh, okay. It's okay. You know what, Alice? I will probably forget what you just told me, and I may write on your paper, where is the rest of your paper? And then you just say, oh, Mrs. Ferguson, poor Mrs. Ferguson, she just doesn't remember anything. And you will just nod and smile and forgive me for writing that, but don't worry about it, Alice. But technical difficulties happen to people. Here's what I noticed about the little hunchback. There's no magic. Do you know, like, we've had a bunch of stories with genies popping out of bottles and whole towns become fish and they talk in the pan and people come out of walls and apparently people get turned into animals just left and right. And he was not dead. Okay, well, we debated this yesterday. One girl I had yesterday said, I don't understand, the hunchback, how could he not be breathing and he wasn't dead and he had that fishbone stuck in his throat? And I said, so you're reading a book where all these people are turned into animals and there are people living in bottles and you're troubled because it's not, the medical background isn't completely accurate. But we decided that maybe it only was a couple of hours and obviously his airway wasn't completely blocked. I don't think that's the important thing in the story. But it just strikes me as out of place. You're reading and it's just fantastical stories and then suddenly it's like it's like a comedy, only kind of a dark comedy where they're hiding the dead body in other people's houses so someone else will get in trouble for it. And you just, what? Yes. And then they're, what am I going to do about this? Well, I'll just take him outside and I don't feel like if I encountered a dead body in my house, they don't wonder who he is or anything. Oh, yeah, this happens. Sometimes there's a dead body. Yeah, or maybe call an ambulance or a doctor of some sort. Would have been nice. Bailey, what are you thinking? Yeah, you know what? Killing was normal, but death maybe was normal. I know. Okay. Do it.
Because like it wasn't until like Christianity really like started to be a thing. Like Christians were the first ones to value or to start burying people and start really caring for people who died and like really like bring to life like the important like the permanence of death and what it means and like that's even though not everyone's Christian today, like everyone has adopted that idea that like just how valuable life is. And, yeah, it didn't used to be like that.
So this is obviously, this is a Muslim people, these stories. So they'll talk about the caliph, right? Who's the current Muslim leader of a group. And so I don't know what the Muslim attitude towards burial is. That's because that makes me interested. What's the protocol for burial or funerals for Muslims? I don't know. Yeah, Brett. Yes. Christianity had spread before Islam spread. So, maybe we have varying levels of respect for death. But I think that what Bailey said is true too. We are isolated from death somewhat. Most of us probably have never been present when someone died because they're in hospitals and it's in these settings. But back then, almost everybody had been. People get sick and die. Well, desensitized or accepting that this is part of life. So I have some friends who farm, and my grandparents farmed too, but I didn't spend a lot of time there. And we would go visit, and they'd butcher the chickens or the pigs or whatever, and they would just throw like the head of something out for the dogs, and you'd walk through the yard, and there's just a head, which is fine. But if you don't grow up in that environment, you're like, there's a head, And even my cats bring me things. I'm like, oh, there's a head on my front porch. But if you grew up where they were slaughtering animals on a regular basis, we were all farmers, we'd be desensitized, but in a good way. Because desensitized makes it sound like your heart gets hard. But in a way that we just accept, well, there's life and death. And these both have, death is a part of life. Yeah, Jesse. Oh, no, the proverbial headless chicken, which I've never, have you seen it?
It's not the movie, but I've seen it actually real life, like literally.
It really happens?
Yeah, if you don't have telephone or your cell phone head, it's still alive for a couple of years or like 10
That's,
seconds.
that's horrifying.
Yeah, and it'll move around.
It's not like it's not real.
Okay,
Have chicken commit suicide. It's incredible.
you know what, I'm already sad. I can't go any farther. Lauren? See, farming life is just a completely different thing, isn't it? The other set of stories, to go away, try to get on a happier note, the stories of Sinbad, right? So one of my early going to the movies memories in the 1970s was there was a 7 Voyages of Sinbad movie. I went with a group of, there were a bunch of kids. I have no idea if it was a birthday party. I think I was younger than 7. And, but the special effects were really, but it impressed me. You know, it was awesome. So whenever I see Sinbad, I think about that. But especially those of you who were with me last year, but anybody who happens to know, is there a particular voyage of Sinbad that seems strangely familiar? Oh, I didn't even think of that, but okay, Jason and the Argonauts, yes, but that wasn't what I was thinking of. But I'll take that. Is there another story, one particular? Because we had, you know, the story where he has to get buried in the cave because his wife died, and then he just like whacks people when they get lowered in to steal their food. Nothing to say about that. And he has to float through the cave. There's that story. There's the rock. There's I know. The Cyclops. The Cyclops. He fought a Cyclops even the same way Odysseus did. He drilled a sharp stake into his eye until it sizzled and he went blind. Just like the Odyssey. Remember? Yeah, but you read this retelling, the Greek myths. And there was the Trojan War and the adventures of it. You don't remember. Oh. No, it's okay. No, my son did, and I hear a lot about Percy Jackson. But Percy Jackson always ends up being
The book after that.
the authority. Okay. So anyway, I read this. When I read this, I wonder, how likely is it that 2 people in different places came up with the exact same story? I mean, it could happen. I'm in Greece, and I live in 1000 BC. I have this awesome story about the one-eyed creature, and he drilled his eye out and escaped. And then 1400, 1800 years later, someone in Persia, 1,000 miles away, gets the same story. Or what is more likely? That they heard the story. That the Iliad and the Odyssey, the story of the Trojan War and the travelings of Odysseus, were so famous that people in Persia picked up on it, which I think is very cool. Anyway. So Aladdin you will meet. Do not expect it to be exactly like the movie Aladdin. Sorry, you know what Disney does to stories. Have any of you ever read The Little Mermaid? It's very depressing, okay? It's so sad. It's not happy at all.
Disney tries to make things happen.
They do try to make things happy. And then I'm like, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Wait, did
Oh, let's make a children's movie about, what? Okay, I'm sorry.
she get killed by herself?
Well, no, you read it. That's it, over Christmas break, sometime when you're not reading tons for me. You just it's probably free online. Just look up Hans Christian Andersen, Little Mermaid. It's kind of long. And then you'll all have to do something to cheer yourselves up afterwards. One thing I wanted to mention, and I can't remember which story it is that begins this way, but it says, when the Caliph Harun al-Rashid went out and did something. Like I said, if I remember what he did, I'd remember which story it was. Harun I don't know if I'm doing this right or not. It's going to be close. Rashid is the leader of the Muslims in Baghdad. This is a real person. This is a real person, and you're actually going to read about him in the Dorothy Mills book coming up. So this kind of helps you see this is the time period when these stories are set. The time period that we're reading about right now, which is why we're reading them right now. Also, I don't know if I mentioned last week, I can't sometimes remember which class I mentioned it to. One of the grand viziers, you know, the prime minister, second in command. Did I do this last week, Jafar? Okay. So things get borrowed and recycled. But so hopefully you will enjoy the stories or whatever stories happen to be in the version that you acquired. It's just unfortunate. Apparently there was an Amazon backup and they couldn't get these books. And I found that when I looked at a lot of books, I found out that they vary in stories included, even if it says Andrew Lang. And oh well. We have a story to write. We are going to write another story this week. And you know what? Before I hand it out, I'm just going to read it to you guys, because after I start handing you things out, you stop listening to me. No offense, but I know this happens. I see your eyes start looking ahead, and you just stop listening to me. We're going to read and rewrite a story about St. Brynden. Have any of you ever heard of St. Brynden? Brynden. Brynden. Not St. Bernard. I actually had never heard of St. Brynden until about 5 or 6 years ago. And there's a medieval document that is about his travels. I'm going to tell you the story, but he's Irish, and he is an actual historical person, like St. Patrick, all right? But there are some very interesting stories told about St. Brynden. So let me lay this on you. Many people think that St. Brynden, an Irish monk, discovered America nearly 1,000 years before Christopher Columbus. The story of St. Brendan's travels is full of strange adventures. St. Brynden lived from the year 489 to about 580. One day, a friend told him about the promised land of the saints. On this island, day never ends, the rocks are jewels, every tree had fruit which was good to eat, every plant had flowers with wonderful smells, the air was always warm. St. Brynden set out to find this wonderful island. First, he and some of his monks built a boat. It had a wooden frame covered with cow hides. The outside was smeared with grease to make it waterproof. It had one sail. St. Brynden blessed the boat and had it filled with supplies. Then he set off to the west with a few monks. After many days, the men spotted an island. A dog led the monks to a large house filled with marvelous furnishings. There was bread, fish, and water for each of the visitors. Then they slept in comfortable beds. For 3 days, the sailors ate and rested. Except for the dog, no other living creature was seen on the entire island. Then they set sail again. On another island, the monks met a man who gave them many supplies. He told them that they would sail for 7 years before returning to Ireland. Not long after leaving that island, St. Brynden and his monks stepped onto a stony beach. They collected a small pile of driftwood and began to cook lunch. But as the fire burned hotter, the earth began to move. What could be happening? The monks shook in fear. The land began to shake and sink into the water. Racing for the boat, the monks paddled away as fast as they could. When they looked back, they saw the island was really a giant fish. Many months later, St. Brynden told the monks that Easter was near. They searched for land so that they could celebrate the Easter holy day. At last, they reached an island. It was full of trees, grass, and flowers. The trees were so covered with snow-white birds that the leaves could not be seen. The birds sang so sweetly that St. Brynden called them his Easter choir. Easter was a cheerful day as the monks and birds sang together. Far away from land, the monks saw a huge beast swimming towards them. The beast's mouth was wide open, as if it would eat the monks in the boat. It swam so fast that it made waves as high as a wall. The huge waves almost swamped the boat. The beast came nearer. The monks held onto the sides of the boat. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, another monster attacked the beast. The beast was killed and the monks were safe. Sailing on, St. Brynden and his friends saw many strange sights. They found a land with many erupting volcanoes. So many fiery rocks were being blown from the volcanoes that it seemed as if demons were throwing flaming stones at the monks. The monks saw places where sheep were as big as cows. Another place had grapes as big as apples. St. Brynden and his crew visited many places before they found the promised land. The land was so big they could not explore all of it. They found fruit and jewels, some of which they took back to Ireland. Some of Brynden's adventures sound imaginary, but scientists have found some very old Irish items in different parts of North America. Perhaps St. Brynden found America first. Nothing to say about that. It's very interesting. I mean, this doesn't even do it justice. Very weird. Seriously. And these islands, he goes back to them on a regular basis. Like, now time for Easter came around again, and we found the island, and they just kept sailing. But isn't it interesting that maybe in the year 500 AD, when is Leif Erikson, and like more like 1,000, maybe 500 years even before Vikings came? Maybe Irish came to Canada or Newfoundland or New England. Could be. Don't know what they. So, before I give you, actually, just Ella, you're here and I'm tight. Would you give every table 5 of these? And then I'll give you the story. But notice something about this story I just told you. It's not really one story, is it? It's kind of a lot of stories. And so I feel like we have done 2 of these outlines together, and I think that you guys could probably do one on your own. Okay? And you get a little more freedom to choose what you want to do. But let me wait for everyone to get your outline. I'm going to give you the story, just a minute. But if I give it to you, it will distract you. So you got an outline that looks like this. This should be very familiar by now. What do we include in our first paragraph? What kind of things go here? Yeah, Bailey. Okay, the characters and the setting, right? Your outline, if you didn't remember that, your outline tells you right off to the side. So everybody's going to kind of have the same thing here, aren't they? Who's in this story? Tell me who's in this story. What? Brynden. Oh, you don't have the story in front of you, so. Okay, I'm just going to just randomly write some stuff. St. Brynden and his monks, and they live in Ireland, and they want to go traveling, so they're going to be on this traveling by sea. We're all going to say something like that in the first paragraph, aren't we? You can embellish. See, I just jotted things down. But that's the characters in the setting, right? What goes in the second paragraph? The problem or the situation. Yes, but there's many problems and many situations. Here's what I'd like you to do. Choose one. If you want to tell the story of the happy island with the dog and all the food, awesome. If you would like to tell a story of an island where volcanoes are erupting and rocks are being flung like demons flinging fiery rocks, awesome. Maybe you're really into the whole camping out and lighting a fire on a big fish's back. How there was wood sitting around for them to collect on the fish's back. You could invent how this happened. Okay? Maybe you just can't decide and you just want to include them all. So you're going to have a lot of stuff here, right? They visited this island, they visited this island, they visited this island. But remember, they're always searching for the paradise, right? And then perhaps your final paragraph, how did it end? What happened? They finally found their paradise island, right? and they return to Ireland. And don't make them traveling somewhere else, because the point of it kind of is that maybe they visited the New World long before, but you can certainly embellish. So if you want to describe the large fish in great detail and give it a certain color or smell or sliminess or non-sliminess, go for it. If you want to get creative with your volcanoes flinging fiery rocks, you go for it. If you just want to describe this dog that hangs out with them and apparently serves them feasts for 3 days, you can make it any kind of dog you want to be. You can give it a name, you can give it a color. I don't know if it should talk.
What was a Saint Bernard?
It could be a Saint Bernard.
Saint Bernard.
St. Brendan's Bernard. That's a tongue twister. But I want you to be able to choose. Now, everybody look at me. Do you understand what I'm asking you to do? Okay, because there's not a lot of nodding over here. We're good? We good? Do you think that will be easy enough for you to just ask yourself questions? Well, what happened to them? What did they do about it? What did they say? What did they think? You can make that up. This story doesn't tell us. What do you think when the ground just starts, the slimy ground starts going back into the sea? What do you think when a dog comes up to you and just leads you to a house with a bunch of food laid out? You can tell me what kind of food they ate. You know what they'd have at mine? You already know, don't you? What would they? Chocolate chip cookies. There you go. So everyone, let me just reiterate. Everybody's character and setting is going to be roughly the same, isn't it? No, let's not. No, because it's about St. Brynden, and he's actually a real person. You could add, if you really want to add, you could add a fictitious, specific monk, one of his friends. I don't have a problem with that, since we don't know their names. But this could be very different for every one of your papers, depending on which adventure you decide to choose. But eventually they do find their paradise island, which may have been North America, and they do make it back to Ireland. And maybe they are the first explorers from Europe that came to North America, maybe. Okay? Now, last week we also talked about parallelism. Hopefully everyone worked in a parallelism in your paper. Just to remind you, in case you didn't, because I see some eyes going, oh my gosh, I forgot my parallelism. First of all, maybe you could write this down in your outline. Parallelism. Remember that we're using 3 words of the same part of speech as a group because it sounds nice. So we could use 3 adjectives. The fish was slimy, gray, and stinky. 3 adjectives. The ground beneath their feet rocked, rolled, and sank. 3 verbs. The monks sailed, this would be good. The monks watched the beast. As the beast swam towards their boat, the monks watched. Cowardly isn't actually an adverb. Attentively, what? In horror, yeah. Horrifiedly. I've done a wrong one. I can't think of 3 good adverbs. Help me. 3 adverbs. How did they watch? They watched intently. Oh. Carefully. Scared. I know. I can't think of an adverb. Scaredly. No. Horrifiedly. That's not a word. What? Horrific is an adjective. Okay, well, I picked a wrong one. Okay, we're going to keep it one. Nervously, the monk, oh, I didn't hear you, got to talk loud. I'm sorry, Simeon, forgive me. All right. Does everybody remember how to do that? Okay, if you forgot, I give you grace, but try not to forget. And how did I? Remember that, so you're writing your paper, you're indenting your paragraph, boom, 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 and I'm writing. This is a really long sentence. And then this is the sentence where I have my 3 adverbs, ly and ly. And then on this line, I'm just going to put a letter P. And it means, Mrs. Ferguson, I did parallelism in this line. Yeah, please see my parallelism. By the way, no, it has to be real words. And by the way, this is a good thing to mention. When we make lists that have 3 or more, remember we put commas between, right? That's one of our comma rules. Yes, Rhett. Where the parallelism is. I don't care. I'll find it. Some people. So I'm done with you. But this is a bonus because I think it's funny. Some people think that this comma is expendable. It's called an Oxford comma. Like that, Oxford comma. But it gets you into trouble sometimes if you leave it out. I invited my parents, Godzilla, and Thor, okay? So if I write it like this, I have now said I invited 3 entities to my party. I invited my parents, Godzilla, and Thor. But if I take this away, does anybody see a problem? I invited my parents, Godzilla and Thor. Now, Godzilla and Thor have become my parents, which I don't even want to think about that. But that's what this comma does for us. It makes sure that you know that my parents are not Godzilla and Thor. But indeed, 3 groups of people came to my party. But you will read people, they argue about this Oxford comma. Oh, we don't need it. But I like to put it in because I don't want anyone to think Godzilla and Thor are my parents. We could change it to anything you want, and it would still be the problem. So here is your copy of St. Brynden so that you can use it for your outline. And I think if there's no other questions about what you're supposed to do for me this week, you are released to go to your next destination. Okay, I did it again. Somebody's got an extra. I did it again. Who's got an extra? Oh, you got 2. Oh, yeah, you should have 2 extras. Okay, 1 for Amorous. Here's the extra for your table. All right. And I haven't given you the rest of yours yet. What is this in my hand? Okay, I'm going to shut this off.